And I think we are now live, and I hope you can hear me. Make sure that you let me know if you can't hear me. Like, write something in the chat, and I'll make sure to fix the microphone. But I'm back from vacation, a short vacation, which is like insane to try to take because of the madness in the world. It's impossible to escape. And it's even worse day by day, hour by hour, as right now we are seeing Donald Trump threatening World War III over not getting the Nobel Peace Prize. And that's on top of the war he's waging inside the United States, the wars he's waging around the world, the horrific and dangerous ways that he is threatening his enemies, and of course, all of the corruption that we have seen over the last weeks and months. All of it culminating in this week. This past week has been insane. I want to go through it all, and I want to take your questions. I want this to be about taking your questions and comments and answering questions in any way I can. So, uh, because I can read the chat and everything is so much better now that we can do Substack Live on the computer, you can ask questions. And if I don't get to your question, you can ask it again because the chat goes up and, I wind up missing it, right? So just, ask away, maybe wait a little while before you start asking questions, and then we'll take some questions and comments. But what insanity we have seen in the space of just a few days, right? We saw Donald Trump invade Venezuela, seize their oil, right? Deposit a check for $500 million from selling Venezuelan oil into a offshore bank account in Qatar, one of the most corrupt countries in the world, the one that gave him the jet. Only he controls this bank account. He threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act to put down the protests of ICE, which is out of control and killing people in Minneapolis. He talked about canceling the midterm elections in November. He now has threatened continually to invade Greenland. This all is in just a matter of a few days. And what we're seeing in the attacks on free speech, it's beyond what is happening in Minneapolis with regard to ICE and the brutal killing of Renee Good and another shooting that happened there, and the way we're seeing protesters being attacked and vilified. But there was a woman in Nebraska who got a knock on the door. Jamie Bonkiewicz posted on social media on Friday that she had been visited by Secret Service agent and a local police officer, questioned about a post that she put on X on Thursday. It wasn't in any way threatening violence of any kind. Her comment was, "When Caroline Levitt gets what she deserves, I hope it's televised." And she was talking about trials. She said, "I want to see her on trial." And this guy actually comes to her door, a Secret Service agent, and asks her what she meant by that, if she had any weapons in her house. She live streamed the whole thing and put it up on X, right? And then the guy backed off, but said, we just have to check out these things. This is not even somebody protesting. This is not even somebody coming into a airport or at the border, right? This is now somebody posting something on X and getting a visit from the Secret Service. So this is what has gone on just in the last few days. And there's so much more that I haven't even gotten to. But I do want to talk about right now what Donald Trump is threatening with regard to Greenland, as we have seen these attacks just days after he talks about the Insurrection Act here, using the military here, a war on American citizens. He then ramps up the attacks on European allies, says he's going to put tariffs on Europe, on all the countries that have now come out against his seizing of Greenland. And these tariffs will go up higher from 10% to 25%. European leaders all gathering and trying to figure out what to do, how to retaliate, what to do. And look, we're going to get to what they should be doing, what everybody should be doing in a minute. but I'm just trying to lay out what exactly happened here because it really shows how completely untethered from reality and how deranged this man is and how dangerous it is for all of us because he not only threatened these tariffs on anybody who didn't agree with him uh, seizing Greenland, but then he actually sent a letter to the Norway prime minister that was then sent to all of Norway's ambassadors, in which he explained that his reason now for going all in on Greenland is because he is angry that he did not get the Nobel Peace Prize. Angry at Norway for not giving him the Nobel Peace Prize, which Norway can't give him the Peace Prize. The government doesn't give the Peace Prize. It's a committee that gives the Peace Prize. But the idea that this guy wanted this public, an extortion of the Nobel Peace Prize, right? Like knowing that, like anybody would know that you didn't really win it. You didn't really get it. You really weren't awarded it. You extorted him, right? Like a country and doesn't care because what he did, he made sure was very public. This wasn't like something leaked that now came out. Trump sent a letter to the Prime Minister of Norway, Jonas Gahr Store, and then the text was forwarded by the White House National Security Council to ambassadors in Washington. It was intended to be read widely. Let's read what he said. Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped, and by the way, he's spelling Nobel the correct way for the first time instead of Noble. So this means others in the White House are writing all this with him. Like they're all down with this, or he's got a gun to their heads, and who knows what the deal is, right? Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant. That is a direct threat. Right. But now, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia or China. And why do they have a right of ownership anyway? There are no written documents. It's only a boat that landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. I have done more for NATO than any country since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you, President Donald J. Trump. He did this publicly. He knew that this was going to be shared widely. He's threatening Greenland, like, we're going to not be into peace now. He's threatening war. And he's saying that it's because he wasn't given the Peace Prize, and he's engaging in extortion here. If you give me the Peace Prize, maybe I won't go to war. As if everybody wouldn't know that he really wasn't getting the Nobel Peace Prize. It was just to stop him from war. This is a deranged and completely sick and untethered person. How can you possibly do any kind of negotiation, which is what we see a lot of the Europeans doing? Trying to negotiate this, trying to give him some sort of power. I think it's time for all of them to just hit him back hard with massive tariffs, boycotts of American goods, make the American hurt. Yes, hurt the American people so that they wake up and see what a deranged president they have. Nobody is fighting back hard. Republicans, forget about it. If this isn't the thing that gets them moving, we don't know. And where are the Democrats? Where are Democrats? In Minneapolis, we're in a war, a civil war. It is what I see in the reports, just the most horrifying thing we have seen as people are protesting on the streets and being faced with people who are armed as if they are in Iraq or Afghanistan going to war. And after coming out really strong, Tim Walz and other local officials have now, gotten this posture of let's bring the temperature down. Let's not, get too crazy. Sent that, message to the White House. Of course, what did the White House do? The White House just completely blew them off and said, "We're not going to listen to you. It's no time for Democrats to try to take the temperature down. You need to fight as hard as they are and hit back as hard as they are." So to me, that is the problem we're also seeing, just complete invisibility. Where are they among this letter that just came out? Where are they among all of everything that's happening right now with him really moving to declaring World War III unless he gets Greenland? Okay, now I want to take your calls and comments and hear from all of you. 866-99-SIRIUS is our number. I'm giving my phone number, of course, as if I'm on the air, but you can't call that number. Don't call it. I'm going to go into the uh, chat and see what some of you want to say. What are you thinking? And what do you think uh, needs to be the next thing that needs to be done? And also, in terms of what Democrats should be doing, and also in terms of what we should be doing, because I think that it's time for uh, strikes and work. People walking out of work. It's time for boycotts of companies, boycotts of media, all of it. We need to have the kind of force that this administration is portraying right now. And so that's what I think. And I really would like to hear what you think and also what questions you have about what is going on. And of course, I'll try to answer as best I can. And as you all know, I was on vacation for a week. I was supposed to go to Colombia. That was 2 weeks to go. And then everything happened there. And there were threats to Colombia. And I wound up going to Paris. And I can tell you the French and people in Europe are horrified by what they're seeing. They are angry, and they should be. And again, I think they should be boycotting American products. I think they should be hitting back with tariffs. It wasn't, like I said, a real vacation because you can't really get away from it all. I'm sure you all understand that too. And I'm sure you all understand the impossibility, right, of getting away completely because you're always plugged in. And I'm back. I'll be back on my show live tomorrow. And I certainly want to hear from you all on the show, and certainly want to hear from what you're hearing from other people as well, and people around you and what they're thinking. Steve Villano writes in the chat, "Please take apart Scott Bessent, a total affront to the LGBT community who is enabling Trump's insanity on Greenland." Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was on television just a couple of days ago saying, yes, we have to take over Greenland because Russia and China are threatening Greenland, and Europe doesn't scare Russia and China. And if we own it, then it keeps them from invading. That is a completely ridiculous argument because NATO is NATO, and the United States would be involved in any attack on Greenland in protecting a NATO ally. Because China and Russia are not going to attack Greenland as long as Greenland is part of NATO. There's no reason why the United States has to own Greenland to keep China and Russia from attacking. Trump here is trying to split up the allies and NATO. There are those who are obviously on the border of Ukraine who are worried about Russia. Is he now going to use this as a way to say, well, I'll help to push against Russia if you allow me to have Greenland? Should anybody trust him? And that Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, goes on television and argues this when he knows these tariffs. He's a hedge fund guy. He knows these tariffs that Trump is threatening are a disaster to the economy, will be a disaster to the U.S. economy as well as the American economy. And as Steve says, yeah, a gay man who joined Trump as the Treasury Secretary after he had in the past considered himself someone who helped the community. He gave money to God's Love We Deliver, an AIDS charity that brings food to people with AIDS. He considered himself a gay activist, but he's also a fund job operator, a multimillionaire, right? Hedge fund um, guy from the past on Wall Street, and he got millions and millions of dollars in selling homes around the country, and he doesn't care about his. He doesn't care about, you know, his community or other people. He doesn't care what Trump is doing to LGBTQ rights, certainly to transgender people. He doesn't give a damn about that. He has his. He's rich, and he's able to get what he wants, and he's got this power now as the Treasury Secretary, and he's always just making excuses for Trump and these tariffs, even though he knows the tariffs are wrong, knows the tariffs are bad. They all have inside information about what's going to happen when they announce something. So they're all on the grift, all making money on it. And he's another example of somebody just like any other minority that is involved in the Trump administration, any other minority that is, you know, part of this administration and hurting their own people. They're all uh, people who've sold out their own communities and only are thinking about themselves. Karen asks, how do we start a national strike? It's interesting. We've seen this in other countries. And, I want to talk a little bit about the 3.5% rule because this is research that's been done by those who've studied protest movements across the globe and where there have been authoritarians in power. And when you get to 3.5% of the country protesting, whether that's in mass protests, as we've seen with No Kings, which have happened over and over again, or in general strikes, that is, according to the research, the turning point when you have 3.5% protesting, when the regime cannot hold anymore. And don't forget that the Trump administration has been on the decline since the beginning of this administration. Unlike Vladimir Putin, unlike Viktor Orban in Hungary, unlike Putin, who had enormous popularity and there weren't protests, there weren't people who were standing up. There were people who were benefiting. The economy was good. They looked the other way of the harsh abuses of minorities and others. In this country, it's different. It's different with Trump. He doesn't have that luxury. That's why his moving so quickly is an example of his weakness because he knows he has a very short window. He has a majority of Americans opposed to him. It gets worse every day. And we've seen millions and millions of people protesting. And, once you get to about 12 million or so, that is 3.5% of the population. Now, we've had, 8, 10 million protesting in many of these protests. And a general strike would add many, many more. The Minneapolis AFL-CIO has called for a general strike on Friday as the movement is spreading to other cities. They're calling for this general strike January 23rd over what's happening in Minneapolis. And as Trump could deploy, we're seeing reports of 5,100 troops being readied from Alaska who are used to very cold weather. And is that going to be him invoking the Insurrection Act, which he's already been told he can't use the National Guard by the Supreme Court? And that's almost put him in the place of the only way he can do it is to use, troops that are enlisted right now and use the Insurrection Act. And that would be challenged, I'm sure, in court, but in the meantime, we'd have troops in the streets. So 1,500 soldiers from the 11th Airborne Division could be deployed to Minneapolis. A general strike endorsed by the AFL-CIO could intensify this and inspire unions in other cities to go on strike too. So, Karen, to your question, you have to get the unions behind this, and it has to spread to other cities. And you've got the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation throughout the state and others joining in this. It's going to start there, but then it can spread to other cities. And that's where you can see millions more people who are involved in this. And again, you need to have those people in the streets. You need to have people showing others that people are speaking out and that people are not alone in what they're feeling. So what I think everybody should be doing is spreading the word about a general strike to other people that they know. Lori says, I absolutely understand Walt asking that the temperature calm down. He is personally targeted, trying to keep Minnesota peaceful. The absent Democratic leadership is another story. Schumer and Jeffries are missing the moment and hindering progress. No, I agree. And I saw other people saying, well, why criticize Walt? Only because bringing the temperature down is one thing and not taking the bait. And I think that was a clear message from Tim Walz and from Mayor Fry. But I think appealing to Trump to take the temperature down, it's like the Europeans saying we need to negotiate rather than, engage in this, ratcheting up of tariffs. It doesn't seem to me to understand that he is going to do this no matter what, and you need to hit back hard. You need to say, I mean, I was glad to see the people of Greenland speaking out, right? And they should be saying this will be an occupation. We will see this as a hostile attack on our country, and occupations don't go well. I think people have to speak forcefully. That's all I'm saying. We have to be very, very forceful in how we're putting all this forth. And, I know a lot of you are feeling, a lot of people saying they can't sleep at night. The trauma of this, I think it's so important to try to channel that into activism because all of this is creating an enormous disaster for Donald Trump in popularity and in the polls. It's helping Democrats, even if Democrats aren't the ones out there galvanizing people. And I don't see any Democrats out there who are really forceful in this moment. We know that people are seeing the only choice right now is to vote for Democrats. And so we have to be organizing and we need to be speaking forcefully at the ballot box. That's the most important thing we can do. And we see what they're trying to do. They're trying to actually stop the elections, right? By redistricting and asking for voter information. Will Trump use the Insurrection Act to somehow go into other cities? I don't see that happening, but we can't trust anything with this guy. He just threatened World War III unless they give him Greenland. How could we, and said it, but no, unless they give him the Nobel Peace Prize, right? That's really it. How can you trust anybody at that point? Arthur says in the chat, Tim Walz and Minnesota politicians need to be on the streets confronting ICE. Tim Walz needs to call out the National Guard. Democrats are as much of a threat to democracy as the GOP and Trump. I don't think the Democrats are as much of a threat to democracy as the GOP and Trump. But I do believe we need to see Democrats, and I'm speaking more generally, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, all of the leaders in the Senate and the House. There are some who are great, and you all know them, of course, AOC and others. But we need to see them speaking the way that Zohran Mamdani has been speaking, very clearly, very forcefully, immediately calling this a crime. What happened to Renee Good, for example, calling it murder, which it is, right? Why are they still playing this game of we shouldn't be prejudging. Kristi Noem prejudged what happened here, and we're not going to prejudge. Well, they prejudged, and so you have to prejudge. The video is clear. Everybody can see the video. We know what happened. She was murdered. Call it murder. Call it what it is. Kristi Noem denied that chemical weapons were being used against the citizens of Minneapolis who were protesting. Just denied it flat out. And the media kept pushing, and then a judge actually ruled that there were several instances of using chemical irritants and ruled that you can't do it anymore. And suddenly Kristi Noem was pushed back, and she actually backtracked on what she said. That's the kind of aggressive action we need to see. That's the kind of real, hard and forceful exposure of their lives we need to see, because it was actually shown to her. And I've said this over and over again. Why aren't they showing these people video? Video was actually shown to her of people using the chemical irritants of ICE, using the chemical weapons on these people. Now, then she said, well, that was because they got out of control. Well, you said they weren't doing that. You lied, right? So there needs to be that kind of pushback. It needs to be forceful. It needs to be constant from Democrats, from media, from as many people as possible. And look, what's happening here on Substack Live, what's happening in alternative spaces is what is really driving so much of the resistance to Trump. Many of you may or may not have followed what's been going on with Michael Cohen, somebody who, of course, became a anti-Trumper, if you want to call that, somebody who was trying to save himself from prosecution, and then came out as an opponent of Trump, as previously as fixer, and then had been celebrated in so much of the liberal space as somebody who was speaking out. But he's been going on MSNBC for months now and other stations claiming that he knows nothing about Epstein and the Epstein files, claiming that he knew nothing about what Trump did, which is kind of weird because the cases that would come to Trump, the cases charged against Trump, the cases filed against Trump would go through Michael Cohen, whether it was Karen McDougal or Stormy Daniels, or others in terms of, sexual harassment and whatever else. Of course, in terms of what happened with E. Jean Carroll, anything would come through Michael Cohen. And there was the case of Katie Johnson, a teenager who accused Donald Trump of sexual assault. That would be child rape. And that case was pretty much killed in some sort of settlement. We don't know anything about it. It's become like almost a mythological thing. They've been able to make it into a bit of mythology that it never really happened, right? That it didn't exist. Of course, there clearly was a settlement, but Michael Cohen would have had to deal with it. In the last few weeks, we've now seen him challenged by Tara Palmieri, who's a journalist who has a platform on Substack, and he got very defensive, and he still keeps saying he doesn't know anything about Epstein. Now he's suddenly come out and said he was pressured by Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, and Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney, into giving them something Trump wants. He's suddenly helping Trump again. And is that, as Wajahat Ali has said, is that because he is worried that he's implicated in the Epstein files? And suddenly he's helping Trump against, because Trump now, used what he said as, they're coercing testimony. And now we saw him deplatformed by Midas Touch and others. All of this is playing out on Substack and in other alternative spaces, right? It's not in the mainstream media. It's here. So we all need to be pushing back and speaking out. We all need to be as forceful as we can and not think that, oh, it's only the mainstream media that can do this. That's not the case. We can push it and push it into the mainstream media. Let's see some of the other questions people have. Diane says, I thought Congress could only declare the Insurrection Act. No, the president can and has in the past used the Insurrection Act, which allows for bringing in the military and to quell rebellion. There has to be all out, complete and total chaos for it to happen and for it to be something that stands up in court. It would be challenged. Right now, he's been told he can't use the National Guard. What the Supreme Court ruled was that the law that he was using doesn't allow the use of the National Guard. It only allows the use of the National Guard if troops are not available. And that would mean using the Insurrection Act. And so now his only choice is to use the Insurrection Act. And he needs it to stand up in court. So he's trying to instigate rioting in Minneapolis, all out chaos, because it wouldn't stand up in court if the facts on the ground didn't show it. Tom Yamaguchi says, so how does putting Putin on the board not contradicts Trump's fear of Putin starting a war in Greenland? And I think Tom's talking about this board of peace that Trump has come up with, which he's getting no takers on, by the way. Look, to try to make sense of what he's saying and what contradicts what he previously said, I think is very difficult. Trump is making deals with Putin that we don't even know about. They're probably trading spheres of influence. I'll let you take Ukraine. You let me take Greenland and Venezuela and whatever else. I mean, that's what he's doing with Putin, in addition to Putin calling the shots and telling him what to do. John Riley says, general strikes have been a crucial node on numerous occasions. The railway stole of the 1835 helped win the 10-hour day. Chicago general strike helped bring about the 8-hour day. The 1934 Minneapolis general strike brought the Teamster strike recognition and brought the rich manufacturing industries to accept other labor contracts and make Minneapolis a union town. Yes. It's a difficult issue. Robin White says, general strike is very complicated, may have strike clauses in contracts. Look, all of it needs to be pursued. I get it. We are in an emergency, though, at this point in time. And we put everything on the table. We have to put everything out there. Beth says, Michelangelo, the latest unhinged letter about not getting the Nobel Prize. So he wants Greenland. Yeah, I started out with that. I mean, I think that is, to me, to me, it's a tipping point in terms of his mental stability. Like, how I could understand if that was leaked. Trump's a narcissist. Trump believes that, he should be lauded and that he's always getting screwed. And you could see him saying that privately. Like, I'm going to really go all in on Greenland because I didn't get the Peace Prize. But this isn't a leak. This is a letter he wrote directly to the Norway president that he wanted public, that they then sent to ambassadors all over the U.S. So this is like, if you're not embarrassed to be seen as extorting the Nobel Peace Prize, the whole world would know you don't really have a right to it. You didn't earn it. You're just being given it so that you don't invade a country. Then I think that's it. Your brain is gone. We're dealing with somebody who is not rational, someone who is, and we've known that for a long time, but it just becomes worse and worse. There are also stories Cecile brings up. Greenland's the prelude to his move on Canada. I just saw a couple of pieces about that as well, where Trump sees this as something that is just the beginning, that Canada also is they keep putting up this bogus argument that China and Russia are threatening the Arctic and the Arctic countries, so that would be Greenland, Canada, are not equipped enough to fight. Well, again, they're in alliances with us. First of all, Alaska is right there on top of Canada, mostly, right? Much of it, and certainly right next to it. So we have a state there, but also we have an alliance with Canada. We're in NATO. Any attack on a NATO country is an attack on all of the NATO countries. There's no reason for the US to own it. So we know this is bullshit. We know it's bullshit. Trump is hell-bent on being seen. Look, this Nobel Prize thing gives us another window into a lot of his motivation. He wants to be seen in history as somebody who did great things. He thinks in terms of real estate and Greenland and Canada, getting these big pieces of land, even if Greenland's mostly empty and there's just, several thousand people there, right? Like less than 100,000 people. It doesn't matter. He wants to see a big map and be able to be seen as the person who expanded it. So, I mean, that's how he thinks. And we should not think that he's not going to go after Canada. And look at what he's doing in Venezuela. He's done nothing to help the Venezuelan people. He took that woman's Nobel Peace Prize, which is not transferable, Maria Machado, right? He took her Peace Prize and still didn't make it so that she could be the leader of Venezuela, keeping as a puppet the Maduro regime leader, the former vice president, keeping her in place as a puppet while the people there are still being repressed. While political prisoners, they released a few, but that's nothing. Many still being tortured in prison. People there still can't have free speech. He doesn't care. He just wants the oil. He just took the money from the oil, $500 billion, and put it in a bank account that only he controls in Qatar. So we know it's all about him wanting to be seen as somebody big and him corrupt and using all of this as a way to enrich himself and his family. And that's why we need to stop this idea of trying to negotiate. Whether it's the Europeans, whether it's the Democrats, stop this idea of, oh, let's just, try to talk this out. There isn't going to be any talking out. He needs to go. We need to get him out of office. We need to get Republicans out of office. And that is about organizing and getting more of the public to vote against them and put Democrats in. And that is about using the tools we have, as we've talked about, general strike or, a protest, in order to do that. There's no negotiating with these people. They are vile, dangerous. We are actually winning in terms of the court of public opinion, and we need to stop them before they destroy the world. Negotiating with them is not going to do it. The way to do it is it's going to be painful. We're going to have to hit it hard. We're going to, I said the European Union should boycott American goods. That's going to hurt Americans. It needs to happen. It's the only way this is going to change. And I think I think we can, and we are seeing the public organizing. It's just a question of how quickly we can do it before he destroys the world. And today we just saw literally him threatening a war, threatening completely destroying the NATO alliance. All of that would give Putin what he wants to, unless he gets a Nobel Peace Prize. So we need to be focused on that. And I know a lot of people say, well, I don't know if we're going to make it to the election. Look, we can't be fretting about what may or may not happen. We just have to use the tools we have and fight hard and speak forcefully. And a lot of the tools are here, right here too. So I thank all of you for being a part of this discussion. And I'm glad we could do it. I'm glad it helped me coming back from vacation to be able to connect with people. I'll be on the air tomorrow on Sirius XM Progress, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, those of you who listen to the show, you can call in. We'll be talking about all of this. And thanks to all of you for being part of the discussion today and for giving some of your ideas and asking a lot of questions. And we'll do this again soon here. And of course, as I said, we'll be on my show tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of the weekend and let's celebrate Martin Luther King, a true leader and a real king, right? Unlike this fake king, someone who was a king of civil rights, someone who gives us the path to how we're going to do this. I mean, you think about that movement and the horrible violence. Just think back to the horrible violence, and people did overcome. So we can overcome. Think Martin Luther King, MLK Day, celebrate the day. And thanks for being here today.